Are we letting them in? Are folks coming
Yep,
in?
people are rolling in. Yep.
Excellent. Megan, do you want to go to the next slide?
Right, everybody is in. Kristen, in the interest of time, we should probably get rolling. It's recording for anyone who jumps in late.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the first technical assistance webinar of 2026 with SustainSC, and we are so thrilled you're making time to be with us. If we could go to the next slide, we are here to do a deep dive on a leader's guide to the updated South Carolina State Water Plan. I'm Kristen Austin Gunter. I'm the Senior Vice President for SustainSC, and I will be moderating our webinar today. I'm thrilled to have Megan Dix, our events and marketing coordinator, with us today. Thank you, Megan, for pulling the deck together, and she will be running the slides. And we've got Joe Kuhn from the Department of Environmental Services with us, who I'll introduce in further depth in a few minutes. Want to welcome our staff who are also on the call from SustainSC. Emily Skaggs, our Director of Sustainability, and Brent Kosick, our newest team member, along with Megan, who's our Director of Partnerships, and our CEO, Leslie Scarden. So you have the full SustainSC team with you today. And we are here today to have an update about the updated South Carolina State Water Plan that went into effect at the end of 2025, and do a deep dive about what's in this plan, how it came together, and the recommendations that came out of this process and what that means for South Carolina's water resources going forward. We've done our introductions with the SustainSC team, but also want to encourage each of you to put your name in the chat along with your company and where you're located, so we know where everybody, who everybody is on the call, and where you are in the world. Typically on our webinars, we do have everybody muted to prevent background noise. So we will field conversation through the chat platform. So as you have questions throughout the webinar, please feel welcome to put those in the chat. And after Joe's presentation, we will monitor the Q&A after that. So you have met our team here, Leslie, Kristen, Emily, Brent, and Megan. And then we'll go to the next slide. So you are attending a SustainSC webinar event, and today we are diving into the water conversation, and our webinars are open to the general public for education and outreach around the sustainability work SustainSC focuses on. And our organization, we exist, and our day-to-day, why we get up in the morning, is to build and grow a more sustainable future for South Carolina at the intersection of commerce and conservation. And what we do on a daily basis is our mission, which is to connect the sustainability goals of businesses in South Carolina with local solutions for the benefit of our economy, environment, and people. And we are thrilled to be celebrating 5 years as an organization officially this month. So as we go to the next slide, what really brings our purpose and mission together is really bringing a diverse membership across different sectors of business, nonprofits, public utilities, public agencies, and academia together, who all share these values of SustainSC. Really what drives us is we value doing good and doing it well to make South Carolina a better place for our economy, our people, and our environment. And we do that work really through collaboration and bringing the different sectors and industries together in a nonpartisan way where we can hear each other's opinions and viewpoints and understand different perspectives in a way that sometimes we don't always agree with, but it helps give us those perspectives so we can have the conversations that help us get through the challenges that we face as a growing South Carolina going forward. And so on the next slide, our strategic framework really does focus around these 4 strategic pillars of expanding our economy, making sure that as a Sustain SC member, that you are getting the information and growth and peer-to-peer networking that you are seeking to be a better sustainable leader across the state. And our other 2 pillars focus on municipal support and land use planning, along with education and outreach. So as we make decisions at the local and state level about our natural resources across the state, that we're doing so in a way that's really supporting responsible growth as we see our state increasing in population. So our next slide. Today, our webinars host a suite of different topics throughout the year. And today we are here to talk about water resource management that falls under our resilience and conservation work. As we noted, we just recently, as a state, signed and have the official updated 2025 state water plan for South Carolina. That took years in the making to pull together. And as part of that, we hosted a workshop on May 4th. And as part of our resilience and conservation workshop or accelerator, to really understand this state water plan and the recommendations. And the audience at that workshop provided input to what they heard that day. And we're taking input from that workshop that you'll hear about a little later after Joe's presentation, and the input we hear from today. And we're rolling that up into a report to provide to the Department of Environmental Services as input and feedback from the Sustain SC community about ways the plan can be enhanced, where there's areas for great collaboration, and where we see other recommendations and considerations. And so that is part of our strategic actions under the resilience and conservation work our organization does. We do work with companies and partners with conservation organizations and state agencies to protect and preserve South Carolina's natural resources. And we do that by fostering a resilient future for our state. So under our strategic actions, we have a lot of different ways we go about realizing this objective. And one is we're focusing in on water resource management. And so it's so timely to have the state water plan completed. And we're thrilled today to have Joe with us to really give us that deep dive on it. So as we go to the next slide, I want to go ahead and get to the nitty-gritty of the subject and why we're all here today. We're fortunate to have Joe Kuhn from the Department of Environmental Services with us. He's the Director of Resources under the Bureau of Water. And Joe is going to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes really giving us that overview of what you can find in the state water plan. And he'll highlight how it was developed, who was involved, and what the recommendations are coming out of the plan and what this means going forward. And we are thrilled to have you today, Joe. I know you've got a busy day ahead heading over to the State House, but I do want to note that Joe oversees a lot of things at the Department of Environmental Services. He oversees hydrology work, groundwater and surface water withdrawal, underground injection control, and private well programs. Joe has spent most of his career in this space. He also spent 9 years in the mining and reclamation section of DES. And he comes to us with a vast experience and knowledge to share with us, especially as it relates to the state water plan. So Joe, I will turn this over to you, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to continue to collaborate with Sustain SE and those who are listening in on this workshop. It's certainly a great opportunity. So if we could go ahead and advance to the next slide. So really the state water plan's purpose and development. So I'm the director of water resources within the Bureau of Water here at DES, and really the two primary programs in this division are kind of the hydrology water planning program and then the water quantity permitting program, where we permit and register all of the surface water and groundwater use across the state. And really the purpose of the state water plan and the planning side of this division is to really understand water use, understand our water resources, how it's used in the state, how it's measured, and how we can project and look into the future on the demand for that water and forecast how it's going to be used in the future. So next slide. So, this water plan supports our future overall here in South Carolina. We are a growing state based in a history of agricultural use. We, to support our growing population and increased industry in the state, we look to see new energy production on the horizon, and certainly economic development continues to thrive here in South Carolina. And we want to be able to balance all that water use and maintain healthy ecosystems so that all water users can benefit. As you can see on the next slide, this type of a planning process benefits all South Carolinians, from the common public and making sure that we have good potable water for our use so that we can continue a thriving agricultural community. We can accommodate new businesses and the growth and continue to enjoy our resources like we all like to do in our boating and fishing and recreating on our rivers and lakes across the state. So in the next slide, just highlight the fact that this is a very collaborative process. It kind of began back in 2014 with building some of the base models, especially for surface water, that were used to create this updated state water plan. It's the third edition. Previous plans were updated in 1998 and 2004. This process started with the DNR, and it came over to DES in the summer of 2024. And we were well into the process of collaborating with the River Basin Councils. In 2025, per an executive order by the governor, we brought in another advisory group in Water SC to really get that process expedited a bit so that we could get this water plan out in 2025. And all along the way, we've been open and transparent and included the public as much as possible. So the next slide describes a bit about the River Basin Councils. We made great efforts to ensure that all water use sectors were represented on those councils. They consisted of 15 to 25 people, and each one of those councils, from about 23 to 25, working from about 2019 to 25, they each produced a river basin plan. And those plans made recommendations and did demand projections and forecasting and created strategies that all rolled up into the updated state water plan. So on the next slide, we talk a bit about Water SC. And the activities that they took on in the year of 2025, and those activities continue. So we had monthly meetings with Water SC members where we had facilitated workshops. We brought in panels and educated that group as much as possible about water management strategies, water reuse, and things of that nature. And we did go out and have public listening sessions across the state. They did also report out to a legislative surface water study committee that recently produced a report out from that study committee that can be found online as well. So in the next slide, talk a little bit about the major planning basins in South Carolina. For those of you that may know what the actual water basins are, this map is a bit different from that, where we took the Savannah River Basin and divided it in half and combined the lower Savannah with the Salkehatchie, just for logistical advantages and bringing groups together. And then we also adjusted the Santee up to where the Wateree meets the Congaree there and becomes the Santee, just again to make sure we were bringing appropriate groups together. So a plan was developed for each one of these basins by us, with the exception of the Catawba River Basin, because there's a long-term planning effort with that basin that spans well into North Carolina up into the Black Mountain area that's ongoing, and they recently produced a draft of their integrated water resource plan. So on the next slide, I'll highlight kind of the time frame. So again, all this process started in 2019, and that resulted in a PD River Basin plan being produced in 23. And then in 2024, we produced the Broad River Basin. So 2025 is where it really ramped up, as you'll see. All other basin plans were developed and completed during last year. The Catawba Water Management Group also accomplished their 10-year process of updating their integrated water resource plan, and we rolled all that up into an updated state water plan. So it has been a very busy time for us, and it continues to be as we get out and educate and collaborate with folks who are interested in this water plan and implementing of it into the future. So on into the next slide, I'll get into a bit of detail. And, there's no way I can get into full detail about this plan in 15 or 20 minutes. So I'll encourage you all to take a look at this. There's both the full plan, which is about a 180-page document, and then there's the leadership guide, our future water leadership guide. That's more of an executive summary and could be used to spread around as you all see fit. So again, our whole purpose is to protect the water resource so it could be beneficially used for all sector uses across the state. And we do that by making sure we're getting good measurement of the use of the water so that we can project that out into the future and, make recommendations and develop strategies to make sure we can sustain that use through time. So the next slide describes a bit of our surface water resources here in South Carolina. By and large, 99% of the water use in South Carolina, it comes from our surface. It is our checking account. It's the day-to-day use. And so, we're blessed with good resources here in South Carolina. During routine, normal weather conditions, we have abundance of water, but it should still be properly measured and managed and planned for in time. But this map just kind of shows those major Huck 6 level basins of South Carolina, the Santee PD, the Ace Basin and the Savannah, and all of our major lakes and streams across the state, and how those interact with our neighbors in North Carolina, where we receive a majority of our flow, and how we share our resource with Georgia on the Savannah Basin side. So the next slide. This speaks to our groundwater resources that are located in the coastal plain. That map of South Carolina there shows the fall line between our coastal plain physiographic province and our Piedmont province. The Piedmont has some groundwater usage, but it's fairly limited in volume and capacity. So this cutaway there kind of shows a general cross section down to Beaufort area of our layered aquifer system here in South Carolina that has been developed through a long period of geologic time. And, you know, those aquifers are fairly thin and superficial up towards the fall line, and they thicken as you go towards the coast up to about 3,000 feet. And recharge rates kind of range from a few years to thousands of years on some of those deeper aquifers down at the coast of our state. Next slide, please. So we can't talk about water management without talking about drought. And, you know, talking about our average rainfall here in South Carolina is about 48 inches. And again, during normal times, we certainly have good resources. There are some areas in the state that we need to pay attention to, but certainly what we want to do is manage our resources in normal times to be very efficient so that they last through drought times as long as possible. There's not too much interruption in those beneficial uses. So these just show kind of that range of rainfall through time and those brown, drier times and those notable periods of drought through history. And I mean, we currently are a bit dry. In the next slide, I describe the Department of Natural Resources Drought Response Committee here in South Carolina. I do sit on that as a representative from DES. And so we kind of showed their map there as how they break up their planning areas from the central, northeast, south, southern, and west, and kind of overlaid our planning basins there to see how those correlate to some degree. But they are a cluster of counties. They meet on a monthly basis through times of drought and set South Carolina drought statuses based on several criteria. Okay, so the next slide, I'm going to describe a bit of our surface water and groundwater resources. So that is all of our permitted or registered surface water users across the state. So anyone that uses 3 million gallons or more per month is required to either be permitted or registered. All the registrations are for agricultural use. So you can see how that's fairly well spread across the state. And, you know, permits are issued for a duration of 20 to 50 years on the surface water side. And those registrations for ag use have no expiration date. So those are just kind of some of the details on our permitting side. For groundwater, again, it's the same threshold. And I'm not seeing the slide advance. If you could, sorry about that. So those groundwater users are clustered in the coastal plain of South Carolina, which makes sense because that's where the available groundwater is. And the same threshold, the permits are 5 years and they're renewed every 5 years. So if you'll go to the next slide, we manage those groundwater resources by capacity use areas, which are these shown here on the map, and it kind of gives you a history of how those were developed through time here in South Carolina, with the oldest being the Waccamaw, Georgetown, and Horry County, and the Low Country down Beaufort Way, and the Trident, Charleston, those tri-county areas. And really that kind of makes sense. The purpose of these capacity use areas, where this legislation has been in place since the 1960s, is to place these areas of groundwater use where there is at least some concern of maintaining aquifer stability and making sure these aquifers aren't drawn down too much through time. So we've been very progressive here in South Carolina to place all of our coastal plain counties into capacity use areas so that they can be managed. So every 5 years we we evaluate this use. We coordinate with the hydrology side, who makes potentiometric surface maps for each one of these aquifers. We use that information and we use our water use to evaluate the area, and then we renew everyone's permit. So we have placed limitations here and there through time to make sure that this this resource is managed. Next slide. So our current water use is shown here, and this is a graph from our state water plan. And so we base that current water use off of 10 years of use. And so that's kind of an average number. And this just kind of shows the sector use percentages. And we remove thermoelectric from this, and we remove all hydroelectric production. Hydroelectric production is 100% pass through. Thermoelectric is very high percentage is passed through, and very little is lost through their production. But when you break that out, then you kind of see more clearly our public supplies, our other primary user, followed by manufacturing, agriculture. And one thing I'll point out about this slide, public supply also inherently supplies water to businesses. Beverage manufacturers, other industries, data centers, things of that nature. So that kind of is captured in that public supply segment. Next slide. So in the plan, we did demand projections. We did a moderate demand scenario, assuming normal climate and rainfall, moderate population and economic growth. And then we did a high demand scenario out to 2050 for both these scenarios. And we've really focused the information in the plan more on this high demand scenario, which, was a hot and dry climate with high population and economic growth. Really, we looked at that as a conservative way to forecast out our water use out to 2070. But we also looked at our permitted and registered amounts as well. Next slide. So this is those projections kind of through time there from 2025 timeframe when the plan was developed out through 2070. And when you include thermoelectric, you see a bit of a dip. As we were developing this plan through time, we knew that there were several of the coal-fired plants in South Carolina being decommissioned, and it looked like maybe there'd be a bit of a dip of water use there. But what we have come to find is we certainly see some new power generation on the horizon, and so that then climbs. And this water plan is a living document, and we're constantly looking at how we do our demand projections and including information as we receive it through time to anticipate the update in the future. So next slide. So these are their kind of comparison of the high demand scenario there in the light blue, the current water use in the dark blue, and the permitted and registered amount in the orange color there. And this kind of just shows that overall, the high demand scenario is about 62% of what we have currently permitted and registered across the state. And so by and large, across basins, we don't come close to using the water that is actually permitted and registered and allocated for use. Okay, next slide. So the plan speaks a lot about, having good water availability, but there is some potential shortages in the high demand scenario and the permitted and registered scenario shown here on this map. And, kind of those numbers of users that saw some shortages across those basins, and then those percentages and frequency of those shortages is provided there. And then on the permitted and registered map, it kind of shows the frequency of shortages specific to main stems of the river and how those would play out if the full permitted and registered amounts were used. Okay, in the next slide, I am showing here the kind of some groundwater areas of concern, known concerns through time. Again, most of these are centered along the coast of South Carolina and are being actively managed through our capacity use program. Historically, Hilton Head and Savannah have had issues with overuse of the aquifers there, and they've curtailed their use through time. And I understand that is rebounding, and as well as some of those areas in Charleston, Georgetown, and Myrtle Beach. And then Florence is a good case study of how the aquifers were being stressed in that area. And when we developed that PD capacity use area and that became known to the community, they then took the initiative to build a surface water treatment plant and access the PD River so that they can conjunctively use both surface water and groundwater there. And that has been great in stabilizing that developing cone of depression. Okay, then the next slide, we'll get into some of the strategies that many of our users can employ voluntarily to manage and be efficient and conservative with their water use, and then some of the recommendations that came out of the state water plan. So in the next slide, we look at some of the demand side strategies that are kind of divided up by sectors there. And one of the things that really stands out to me in this slide is the potential for water reuse programs that were identified across sectors, along with a lot of what they're doing, making sure their drought plans are updated, making sure they're getting out and educating the public about water use, being conservative with their pricing structures, having good leak detection and water loss programs, irrigating efficiently, using cover crops, managing their soil. The industry has been real good about processing water through multiple times and making sure they're being conservative. But water reuse programs is something that I believe South Carolina continue to look to in the future, especially along the coast. So in the supply side, on the next slide, again, you see some of those programs being discussed, and up in the Grand Strand area and down in the Beaufort Hilton Head area, they've been very successful with employing aquifer storage and recovery wells, where they can take surface water and put it into the aquifer during off-peak times and during winter times, or even overnight in some scenarios, and then employ that water back out of the aquifer into their service area in high demand summertime, high tourist time frames. And that's been a very good success in our state. And then all the other ones listed there, conjunctively using surface water and groundwater, something we talked a lot about and will continue to encourage across the state. Next slide. So the recommendation summary is really what I'm showing here is those collaborative partners that developed the state water plan, the River Basin Council group, the Water SC group. Really, these are 8 recommendations that everyone generally had consensus on, and many of these are also reflected in the report from the Surface Water Study Committee that was recently produced. And so, basically everybody thinks we should continue this process. We should keep it funded. We should keep the River Basin Councils going. We should keep Water SC going. We need to make sure we're collaborating, communicating at all levels with both North Carolina and Georgia. And we're seeing that play out. We want to get out and educate and outreach across any and all platforms that we can, and this certainly plays into that. Drought response should be strengthened. I know that DNR is looking at maybe some statutory changes that they may look into in the coming years. We need to make sure we're always looking at our data collection and modeling and seeing if we can be more efficient. We can enhance that moving forward. And in this water planning process has been focused on water quality to date. And what we're trying to do moving forward in next iterations of these plans is start incorporating water quality. And really, we would like to begin by really educating our stakeholders on all the water quality programs already currently here in DES and what other agencies and NGOs and such are also doing in the water quality area. And so that when we begin incorporating this into our planning effort, we can have an informed, educated discussion on that. Certainly want to explore expanding water use programs, and that we should always be looking at our water law policy and evaluating if any changes are needed. So next slide. So taking 4 of those recommendations, this is really our priority near term, and we're well into doing that. I've had an opportunity to share an overview of this water plan with many different groups and conferences already to date, and Scott Harder, our hydrology program manager, has also been able to do that, and Christy Ellenberg, our collaborative partners person, has been out there. So we're out there, we're educating, we're spreading the word. We're going to continue to get feedback and look at how we can enhance our data collection and modeling, and again, how we can incorporate water quality into the planning process through time. So next slide. So this is a table in our Chapter 9 of our state water plan that kind of outlines those next steps and some of the things that we are committed to as our obvious next steps of keeping this process going, doing public and legislative outreach, making sure people are aware of the state water plan, and then looking at those ways that we can expand and enhance our modeling for ecological flow relationships. I know sedimentation has been discussed a good bit, and other water quality things that we might could incorporate there. Looking at water reuse, hydrologic variability, and then exploring ways to fund this process moving forward. Public-private partnerships are something we've been discussing, and really making sure folks are aware of all means of funding available to them to implement some of the recommendations from these plans. Next slide. So this is a picture captured at the State House when Myra had the pleasure of providing the governor this state water plan on time. And many of the key members that were involved in the development of this plan are shown there. And that was certainly a proud moment for DES and for South Carolina. So the next slide. And those are the 2 documents that I mentioned. That QR code will take you there if you'd like to download those and read through them. Again, that Our Water Future document is a very condensed version of this. And the state water plan is that larger document. And so the next slide. I do want to mention that we plan to hold a water summit on May 19th at the Columbia Convention Center. I believe Christy Ellenberg sent out an email yesterday to many of our stakeholder group that registration is now open for that event, and I'm hoping that they'll forward that along, and I can certainly forward that information along to whomever might be interested on this call. And I believe that is the end of my slide deck.
Great, thank you, Joe. And along with the QR code to the plans, we also put links in the chat where you can find the state water plan. You can always go to Water SC's website to find all this information. And then we also have a link to the leadership guide. So appreciate your insights, Joe. This brings us to the Q&A session of the webinar. So Emily, I'll turn it over to you to manage some of the questions that have come through.
Yeah, thank y'all for being engaged in the chat. So it looks like the first question is, can you define what public water supply covers and does it include water reuse?
So public water supply, I'm not sure exactly what the question is there, what it covers. Do you mean who they supply water to?
Oh, and that was my question to kind of get things going in the chat. But I was really curious, like as we think about utilities such as REWA, other sewer districts, is that part of the public water supply that you mentioned in the plan, or is that handled separately?
Yeah, so I mean, I can speak to that to some degree. Thank you for the question, Kristen. So, REWA, they handle the wastewater side of things in the upstate areas, the way I understand it. Greenville Water supplies the water from their reservoirs up that way, and then the water gets pushed out to the users, and then the wastewater is collected from REWA, treated, and then put back into the system at their NPDES outfalls. And so, yeah, it's all part of the system. When we employ our surface water allocation model, what we call the SWAM model, it takes all of that, all of those withdrawals and those outfalls that put the water back into the system into account as those systems flow downstream. And then all the USGS gauges are also tied into that model. And many of those have anywhere from 50 to 100 years of record. So all that use and discharge of water is all embedded into those gauges. And so that's kind of how that interacts in our measurement of water use.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, scrolling through, looks like another one from Kristen. How often will the river basin plans and state water plan be updated? It's actually a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. This river basin planning process, this is the first time the state has taken this on. In the 04 plan, they were certainly contemplated and recommended, and that's really one of the accomplishments that we've made since that 04 plan to date, is to, as a state, create these river basin councils. How often they'll be updated, I think it's hard to really say, but we can kind of speculate. We hope to update them every 5 years or so, and then roll them up into an updated state water plan as well. But it's possible that they could be amended in some fashion, and even in a more closer frequency, or at least maybe highlighting some of the implementation accomplishments or any new modeling or data collection that may have taken place through that time. These river basin plans and the state water plan are certainly meant to be living documents and to be used and updated as needed. So.
Fantastic. Looks like another one. Can you supply the link to the Legislative Surface Water Study Committee report?
Yeah, I can certainly do that. I'll probably have to do a bit of digging on that. But yeah, I think that can be located. I can. I don't know if I can do that in real time during this time frame, or maybe I can follow up with Kristen and she can get that out to those here.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. We can do a follow-up email to all who participated with some relevant links. Because there were also questions about getting access to the slides and the recording, which I put in the chat, will be available on our website later today. So that brings us to the end of our questions. If there are no more anybody wants to put in the chat, I think we're ready to close.
It looks like we've got one
Oh,
more question.
Yep. There we go. Amy said, do you know of any residential secondary water metering in the state?
I'm assuming that you're referring to private well usage across the state, and we do not meter or require reporting of private well usage across the state. So I'm not aware of any secondary, again, just to reiterate, our water use reporting requires any permitted or registered water user to report their use annually to us by month. They report it at the end of the year, and the threshold for that is 3 million gallons of use in any month. So like our ag users, they may not use any water during the winter time frame, but then they meet that threshold during the growing season, and they report all that use. But no, not for private well usage across the state.
Great, thank you. If there are no more questions, I think now, Kristen, we're ready to move on to the wrap up.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Joe. so much for sharing this information with us. Hopefully this is part of the education and outreach. And as we go to the next slide, we do want to note, though, that the way SustainSC has wanted to play a role in the education and outreach is by hosting not only this webinar, but like I said earlier, we hosted a workshop on March 4th where Joe and his team presented about the state water plan. And then we broke up and did really interactive breakout sessions to hear from the SustainSC members who are coming from a lot of different sectors about ways they saw improvements to enhance the plan, the recommendations that are best suited for collaboration, and also supplement other recommendations for consideration. And so it was a great day. And if you're a SustainSC member, I highly recommend our workshop, especially the one we had on March 4th, was robust in being able to hear from others about input that they want to see. So what we're doing is taking the input from that day and rolling it up into a summary report for DES. So as the plans are continuing to be live and updated and thought about, we are providing this input for consideration as the plan moves forward. So a couple of highlights just from we broke. We had group discussions, and then every individual of the 36 participants that day went around and voted on the priorities that they saw and what they wanted to see from their own perspective as priorities. And a few things really rose to the occasion, although all the input was incredibly valuable. But it seems like for improvements, there really is a desire for more focus on water quality to be looked at. And then something that came to light during our workshop that day is that we did have a panel discussion about the data industry growth occurring in South Carolina. And we recognized that when the state water plan was being developed, data center industry growth was not what it is today. So it was a little hard to forecast that coming down the pike. So there's a little bit more work to look into the models and update the plan in regard to a data center industry growth across the state. For best suited in collaboration, effluent reuse and utilizing reuse as a cooling data center as a practice is that really popped as an area, along with collaborating across stakeholders on addressing water quality. And again, that water quality component popped up again. And then when we thought about other recommendations, there really is an interest to provide more information about how to use the state water plan at multiple scales, such as the municipal level planning and decision making. And Joe, that was one question I did start to write up is, how will this plan be used at that local level, at say a county level planning standpoint? Has that been determined of how this will touch down locally across municipalities?
No, I don't think that's been specifically determined, but really it's a good reference document for those local municipalities in combination with wherever they're located within within the state. They could also utilize the River Basin Plan associated with that area, and they would just both be good reference documents. They both have a lot of good information in the appendices. They list out in more detail all the individual recommendations made at the River Basin Plan level, and then also a summary of those in the state water plan. And so I just think they're a great reference document, and we do look to try to get out to those COGs and other areas to educate them on how it could be used potentially. Thank you. That's a great recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you. And then, the other recommendations, assessing stakeholder involvement to make sure, key groups are engaged, continue this coordination with water utilities and having them at the table. And then there was a lot of interest that kept popping around refining the models that were used. And that kind of goes into the data center component, that if we could refine the models to incorporate the data center industry use. Those are the highlights, but within this webinar recording, as well as this slide that will be uploaded on the whole deck, this is a little snapshot of what came out of that workshop. And really just ask those on the call today, if you have any input about improvements to enhance the plan, where you see areas to collaborate or other recommendations, if you could please send that to me. We will roll that into the overall summary report that we'll be providing to the Department of Environmental Services by April 15th. So thank you so much. And Joe, thank you for you and your team and your agency for being transparent and open to continuing to seek input and keeping this plan in a live version and not, just on a shelf. So as we wrap.
I just want to say thank you to you, Kristen. We're always happy to do it and be available. We certainly appreciate the opportunity that you provided to us. Thank you.
Yes, and we'll continue the conversation. So in wrap up, we'll just head to the next slide and just give you a couple of brief updates. Well, that's the additional input and the homework assignment. If you want to send answers to those questions to me to roll into the report. And then on the next slide, as we wrap up here, and we'll continue to the next slide, we have some incredible conversations coming up. We hope that there is still time to register for our policy briefing for tomorrow. So tomorrow in Columbia, you can go to our website and register. And I believe it's Senator Davis will be with us to just give us a state of the state of where things are in session right now. And then there's still room to register for our kickoff and launch to our 2026 Energy Series. We have a national thought partner, C2ES, who will be coming to South Carolina with the battery storage supply chain roadmap that they've put together for the Southeast. And they are going to test drive it here in South Carolina to see what recommendations may be best suited in their roadmap for our state. We'll also hear from SC Nexus and Finergy as we start to really dive into how to improve the battery storage supply chain as a way to increase energy supply across the state. We will have another policy briefing to wrap up where things have landed in session on May 19th. And then we have a second energy workshop that'll be held in Mount Pleasant on June 2nd, focused on distributed energy resources. And we have the Pew Trust coming to present some of their thoughts as a national thought partner on it. And do not forget and save the date for August 18th with the Circularity Summit that'll be held in Columbia to start thinking about the circular economy and ways that we can make greater impact across the state of South Carolina. So I think you'll find all our events in this year with Sustain SC will have a real interactive input contribution to take forward into forward movement. So then on the next slide, we hope that you'll stay engaged with us through our social network channels. And it's a great way to stay plugged in to what's happening and what's coming down the pike, as well as just good, solid information. And then I think this wraps us up to our last slide, that we'd love to hear your feedback on how we did today. This is our first webinar of the year, so we want to improve upon it. So please scan the QR code and let us know how we did. And then we'll wrap up on the last slide here. And we exist all together in this community to bridge commerce and conservation for a more sustainable future for South Carolina. So thank each of you we thank you for your time today to be with us. Joe, again, our deep appreciation for your time, and continue to stay plugged in as we work together for this intersection of commerce and conservation. Just know our staff's available too for any questions that you may have. So hope you have a great rest of the day. And again, this webinar and the slide deck will be up on our website. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.